Woburn. I'm your host, Samantha Stone, and we have a little bit of a power outage in the center of town while we're filming, so I'm not sure that the mayor is going to be able to join us, but we have two fabulous guests today, Representative Rich Haggerty, and we're going to talk about an important tax relief bill, and we all like to hear about that. And we're also going to talk about the right to shelter law that's in place and get a little bit of a state's view on that. And then Marie is here from the Senior Center because there is so much going on there. And we're going to connect with her to talk a little bit about some of the programming that's happening there. And of course, Scott will join us next week. Hopefully the power outage is temporary and all will be well there. But Rich, thank you for joining us.
Happy to be here, Sam. Great to see you. And again, just another shout out to WPMC for your great election night coverage last week. That was great.
Yeah, it was super fun to do. I hope the buzz and energy that we felt on site came through on the taping, because it was a lot of fun to do. So
it definitely did.
Awesome. So before we talk about saving money with the tax relief bill, let's talk about spending money a little bit. I want to talk about the right to shelter law that's in place right now, and kind of get a sense, if you have a sense of how many people we're now serving in Woburn. We know that there are many cities. I know that some of the refugee families moved in recently to Lexington. And so, this isn't something that just affects us, but do you have a good sense of where we are at in terms of numbers?
Yeah, as you kind of referenced, it definitely goes up and down. So it's a little bit different to nail down a number, but the last numbers I was hearing, we were around 160 with about 77 students in the school system, 160 rooms, if you will, throughout, I think, 4 hotels across the city.
Right. And I know there are a couple of organizations that have been doing like winter outerwear drives and things to help support those families. So lots of people across the city are making sure those families and those, kids are staying warm this winter. They don't generally come from cold weather climates. So, but if I understand correctly, what I've been reading about is that from a state level, we've sort of hit the money we had allocated in our budget for serving these types of this program. What do we do now, right? Because the families are still here and there are new families, I imagine, still coming in. What does this mean for us?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think we're all trying to figure that out. At the end of the day, I think we know that this is an unprecedented situation. We have seen a huge increase over the course, in particular, the last 9 or 10 months, but really even going back over a year in some cases with regards to the numbers that are coming in and arriving here in Massachusetts. Our shelter system has reached its capacity at this point, about 7,500 units. And I think the governor's been clear that she's holding the line on the cap at this point, something I support until we figure out really where we're going here, whether or not the numbers are going to abide, whether or not they're going to continue to increase, and really whether or not we can shift strategy. This is a federal government problem in part, right? Because we know that, while the 7,500 families we're helping right now, half of those are migrant families who have come into our state. About half of them are folks who have been living here prior. But we know that the folks who are coming into our state are largely because of the fact that the federal government has made some determinations at the border around, asylum seekers and refugees, be it from Haiti, be it from Afghanis and other parts of the world where a lot of things are going on, and we're trying our best to try to deal with that. But really, the feds need to figure out a way to tighten the border, I think, at this point, in order to lessen the impact, I think, on states. And at the very least, I think the feds have a responsibility to come to the table with more money to be able to help states who are dealing with this. The state is obviously making sure that communities are largely held harmless right now. And last week we did a bill. It was about 75 million directed towards school districts who are educating our migrant families to make sure that school districts and communities like Woburn have the financial resources to be able to deliver the services that these folks expect. But we know long term that it's unsustainable, and we need to figure out really a different strategy, I think, going forward. And that's why I think the governor has taken the stance that she has. I mean, she declared a state of emergency back in August. And she has the tools in her toolbox by doing that to be able to tweak her interpretation of the law to be able to kind of fit the moment. This law has been in place for 40 years. This isn't something that came in overnight, and it's not going to be changed overnight. 40 years worth of helping, women, pregnant women, women with families, with children. That's what it was intended for. And it served an incredibly important role for a long time. But now we're in a situation, obviously, where we've reached capacity and we need to rethink how the program's working.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think a lot of us really were ignorant of this law. It's been around for a long time, but until we had migrant families come into the community, I think most people didn't know that it existed, or if it did existed, we didn't really understood how it was being used. And so I appreciate you letting us know about half of the people who are in the program were in the state already and were being served, and about half are new families who have come in. So I think this raises a question. This was written 40 years ago. No one could anticipate the situation we find ourselves in today as a community. Do you feel like the law needs to be written, or do you feel that it needs just a different funding model? Kind of, what is your take on things?
I think we're working through that now, to be candid. I think it's something that there's a lot of balls in the air. We're trying to figure out whether or not we can tweak the program. I think that's a lot of pressure on the government to do that, to be able to kind of meet the moment. Are the feds gonna come to the table with either resources or a change at the border to be able to lessen the impact, if you will, on states across the country? Some of those things are up in the air, but the big thing we're focused on right now is really around trying to get folks working. And that's why, starting today, there was a program at multiple sites across the Commonwealth to help expedite the work process with the Department of Homeland Security, so that they can file for their work permits, which will hopefully allow them to expedite their work authorizations. Because all these folks want to work. If you talk to them, they want to get out there and be able to work. And we're a country of immigrants, whether it was the Irish 170 years ago, the Italians, 120 years ago, the Germans, 100 years ago, the Brazilians 20 years ago. I mean, you can go right down, all the ethnicities in different parts of the world who have landed on our shores and been, granted opportunity. But the challenge, of course, is the numbers coming in right now at such a high clip. So we got to find a way to get folks working so that they can find ways to help themselves, which is, I think, what they all want to do. And that's something that I think it's important for us to keep our eye on.
Thank you for bringing it up. It was, certainly one of my questions. I mean, for those folks who aren't familiar, there is a significant waiting period from when these folks enter the country and are housed, from when they are allowed to get a work permit. There's a federal law that is in place, and that law is in place so that the folks entering, they can be vetted. And it was created for good reasons. However, in the current situation, it effectively requires the states and the cities to support these families for an extended period of time, because they're not allowed to work. And so what Rich is talking about is expediting that process safely and securely, and finding ways to make sure that we can help support those families getting to work more quickly than the way it had been set up prior. Is that a fair summary?
It is.
Okay, great. Excellent. I appreciate you touching base on that. I know all the communities in Massachusetts have a lot of questions and concerns, and certainly Woburn, like I had mentioned early on, is stepping up to help support these families and these children in particular, and make sure they're cared for. But I'm glad that there are folks like yourself at the state level who are looking for the long-term solutions that will keep those families safe and cared for, but also make sure we have the budget and the infrastructure to manage all of it.
No, I think you're right. And again, the working piece is a big part of this. And everybody I talk with, who, some people are sensitive to this issue one way or the other, and that's okay. But everybody seems to agree that, getting folks working and allowing folks to be able to provide for themselves and to help them move out of the shelter situation, to be able to maybe, go in with another family and be able to rent a place, as many immigrants have throughout our country's history. Those types of things are the solutions that are going to help get us out of this problem. But, we're not going to get out of this overnight, and that's okay. But we've got to fix the system, sooner rather than later, because we've got to, we've a challenge right now, on taxpayers, right? Because the amount of money that's being utilized to stand up this program, and everybody recognizes that and the seriousness of it. And we're doing work to try to figure out how best we can create an off-ramp so that families are moving out of these hotel situations into more permanent housing situations, and again, working, providing for themselves.
Great. And, it goes without saying, but I'm going to say it anyways. A lot of families are using this program that were here in Massachusetts prior. I think Rich, you had said about half of the people there. And anything we do, we don't want to remove the availability of the programming for those families who have need and who, lots of situations get people in a position where they need something like this. And there's all kinds of reasons that happens. And certainly whatever we do, we want to continue to serve those folks as well.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Let's talk about saving a little money now. Let's transition. I want to talk about the tax relief bill, because we haven't had, what is effectively a reduction in taxes in a couple decades now, right?
Oh yeah, over 20 years, really, where you've seen a significant amount of tax relief. Once finally implemented, the tax relief that we signed into law beginning of October is going to come out at about $1 billion back in the hands of Massachusetts taxpayers, and that's real money in real people's pockets, and we know that it's important. We look at it from an affordability standpoint of view, everything from housing to groceries are up, and we realize that, but we also look at it from a competitiveness standpoint of view, and making sure that Massachusetts is still an attractive place to come to raise a family, to build a business, to hire employees. To retire, all of those things are really important to our long-term competitiveness, and we're open ears on that issue, and we were thrilled to be able to get it over the goal line.
I love to hear that. I have a few. For those who are interested, there's a long list of tax relief that's in that bill, and I recommend that people look into it. I've pulled out a few that I'm going to ask you about, Rich, specifically, because I think they probably affect the most people in our community, which is why I pulled them out. They were chosen by Samantha. There isn't any scientific reason by that, so please go look at the full list before you, to go look at that. But there's some that I want to ask you about. Before I do that, though, doing a change like this is complex because our tax codes are complex and people pay in various ways for things. How did the legislature go about deciding what specific items were going to be included in this bill?
Yeah, so this has been kind of in the works, if you will, for quite a bit of time now. The House passed this bill multiple sessions, and last session we weren't able to get it over the goal line. But finally, again, we did final action on it in September, and we're able to get it done and have the governor sign it in October. But the process really is, the bill filing process begins the beginning of the legislative session, typically in January of the odd numbered year, excuse me. And once the bills are filed, they're sent to committees, and those committees that handle these issues then have public hearings, allow the public participation to take place, allow legislators the opportunity to testify. So in this case, the Revenue Committee held a series of hearings over the course of the past year, listening to all the brilliant ideas of all the legislators and perhaps some of the not so brilliant ideas. As an example, one of the bills that I filed was around our senior property tax work-off program, which I know works really well in the city of Woburn. And I had filed what was eventually incorporated into the bill back in January. Which was kind of a big win for me and exciting, and that was great to see. But most of the elements that you see in the bill come from a variety of different legislators and have kind of been compiled into an omnibus bill. And once it came out of Revenue, it went on to Ways and Means, got another review to figure out what the impacts would be in our budget and whether or not we could handle it in the long term, and what are the from a sustainability standpoint of view, what are we looking like from a tax receipt standpoint of view? How can we handle it? How much of it can we handle? All of those types of things were handled in Ways and Means, which I serve on, and then eventually went to the House floor and got an affirmative vote. I think it was almost unanimously. One person voted against it, I think.
I think that's great. And I'm glad you brought up the property tax. I'm going to explain that in a second. But one of the things that struck me about the list is it felt to me, and I don't want to make assumptions, but it felt to me that the groups of people who are targeted with these reliefs was purposely targeted to help those who might get the most benefit from it, right? we were targeting middle-class Americans who were hardworking, or those who might be on a fixed income. There's an inheritance tax one that might be an exception to that rule, but for the most part, the things that we'll talk about, I think, was clear, the intention to help economic growth and help those who probably needed it the most. Am I giving too much credit, or was that part of the goal?
I think you're 100% right. I think that's what, we called it the Act for Competitiveness, Equity, and Affordability. And I think the affordability piece was to make sure that we were targeting it at seniors who were trying to remain in Massachusetts as retirees and still wanted to live here. So things like the senior tax work-off program or the senior circuit breaker, both of those programs were targeted at our seniors to give them a bit of a break. The estate tax, as you alluded to, again, that was about keeping many seniors here in our state. We didn't want them going over the border to New Hampshire or maybe to Florida and setting up their estates down there in order to dodge our estate tax. As the example, as you mentioned, the estate tax, it seems like it was for a long time targeted at the high earners. And the folks with tons of money and tons of equity. But as we know, if you bought a house in 1977 and you rode the market the last 40 years, you might be living on Social Security and maybe have a couple of bucks in the bank. But, the biggest part of your equity and everything in your life you've worked for might be your home. And that happened to have increased in value substantially above $1 million. I didn't think, and I think that I can speak broadly for the legislature, didn't think that the estate tax was designed to capture somebody like that. It was designed to capture the Rockefellers and the folks who have oodles of money.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned that. I think that's a good example of it, and it's a good reminder who that serves. I want to talk about the work abatement. So for folks who aren't familiar with this, seniors can apply. There's certain things like they work the voting polls, I think maybe crossing guards. There may be other roles within the city. Those are the two that I've heard of, where instead of being paid to do that work, it's sort of reduction in their tax bill, at least as part of their compensation. And so they are able to serve the community, and we're able to help people who are on some fixed income. It's kind of a great program. The way it is worded, at least in the summary of the laws, I did not ever attempt to read the actual rules themselves, but I read summaries of them. It sounds like what the state has done is allowed municipalities to be able to increase the amount of abatement they're able to do. What would we as Woburn need to do to take advantage of that? Is there changes that we need to make to our own legislation? Do we just need to vote on it? Like, what happens next once that becomes official?
I think what would happen is I think that they would assumably be the mayor would send down an authorization to the city council, and the city council would vote in the affirmative by a simple majority to adopt most of the items within the tax relief bill that are specific to local adoption, including that item.
Okay. There was another I found intriguing, which was the Marie, although unless you all can't see Marie, I can see her screen, and she's cheering, and rightfully so. There's an apprenticeship tax credit program that expands my understanding. I didn't look at the detailed list, but expands the types of apprentices that can get that tax credit. Can you tell us a little bit more about it? I'm not sure that we've ever taken advantage of it, and I'm now curious if my son should, because he's technically an apprentice in metal fabrication, but I was just curious sort of a little bit more information about that.
Yeah, so this kind of strikes at the competitiveness issue, and this is really more targeted at businesses in some ways, to be able to have them create these apprenticeship programs within the fields that we know we have a backlog of open positions. So you think about nursing, or you think about electricians, or certain industries, and it allows companies to be able to essentially get a bit of a break on the income tax side of things, and on their balance sheet, to be able to stand up these apprenticeship programs, to be able to direct people and encourage folks to go into the areas that we know we have a deluge of opportunity and just a great number of openings. We're seeing that across, like I said, nursing is an example. I think electricians is an example. Folks who help folks with developmental disabilities. I mean, you can kind of go through a laundry list of folks who are, and there's a lot of industries right now. I mean, we couldn't certainly include them all, but happy to get you that list of who is included, so you can take a look at it and see, so that companies have an opportunity to be able to encourage folks to go into the field of work that we know we need more workers for.
I love that. One of my favorite ones on the list, because I thought it's a topic we've talked a lot about on this show, and we know is a big challenge, is around affordable housing, and that there was the ability that municipalities could create a tax exemption for people, it looked like to me, who were building affordable housing. I'm not sure I'm interpreting that correctly. So I wanted to better understand that and understand how the state was defining affordable housing, or if that would be up to the municipalities to define.
Yes, there's a couple of different things. There's the HDIP, which is really targeted more towards gateway cities. It allows or encourages affordable housing to be created in gateway cities. Essentially, provides tax relief for businesses and companies who are constructing this type of housing. Another item that we created was essentially a affordable housing tax credit for folks who own a rental property, who have somebody in that rental property who falls below a certain income level. And then that's a local option that would allow local communities to provide tax relief to the property owner as long as they have somebody in their property who is below a certain economic level. And then again, the design behind that is to try to keep people in these homes so that they're not coming out and trying to find other housing opportunities, or going into our affordable housing system that we have across the state, or the emergency shelter system, et cetera. And there was another program in there as well around, again, increasing supply. Again, it's an affordable piece targeted more at, I'll call it, construction companies and home builders, to continue to push them to increase the supply side, because we know we have big time demand, and we know that interest rates are wreaking havoc in the construction world. And whether you want to do a home improvement project, you name it, or whether you want to refinance your home, we know that when you start talking about 7-8+% interest rates, that the cost to do these projects has become really challenging economically. So we're trying to be creative in order to support the supply side of the problem.
Great. There's another one here that was around, just looking, I'm turning into my grandmother with my glasses down so I can read my paper here, but I want to make sure I get these right. There was a rental deduction, which was increasing the cap that you can use against that from $3,000 to $4,000. That one also struck me as very targeted towards certain communities of people who could really benefit from it.
Yeah, no doubt about it. We know there's a lot of renters out there who who traditionally would have moved at this point on to buying, call it a first-time home, or the small cape, or that type of thing, and a lot of folks who are unable to right now because of the fact that the home prices are up so much, and interest rates are up so much that therefore payments, i.e. your mortgage payment, is up as well. So we tried to give some assistance to those folks who are maybe saving for a home, or not that it needs to be that, but really anybody who's renting right now, so that they get a few extra dollars at the end of the year. And as you said, it moves from $3,000 up to $4,000 when they're doing their taxes, as long as they're paying, I think it's over $6,000 a year in rent, which
is not hard to do.
Definitely
not hard to do, for sure. We don't need to talk about it in detail, but there is a pretty significant child and family tax credit increase.
That's an important one. That's
right?
That's up to $480 a kid. And that's directed to, absolutely at families to hopefully continue to make Massachusetts a more affordable place for people to raise kids. So, if you get 2 or 3 kids, it's easy to, like we were talking earlier, it's easy to get, maybe upwards of $1,500 or close to it off on your tax bill at the end of the year if you get some dependents. So I've got a dependent now, so I appreciate that $480.
My kids all make too much now, which I'm not complaining about, but I miss my days of being able to call them dependents, even though they live at home still and I feed them. I feel like I should be able to check that box just for that reason alone. But that, I think that's really targeted. And there's some, the data on that one shows that it's going to affect an awful lot of families across the state. And then the last one that I wanted to call out was, which I thought was interesting, was there's an earned income tax credit at the federal level. And we look like we have increased sort of the credit you get to get that. I guess we used to be capped at 30% of that. Is that, do I have those numbers right? I think.
Yeah.
And now you can get up to 40% of that credit. So an increase of 10%.
Correct. You know, as long as you're making under $60,000 a year. So again, targeted at a specific population, and trying to help folks. I mean, we know people are paying more at the grocery store and at the gas pump, and we heard them. And the state was, doing okay for a long time financially with regards to receipts and whatnot. And we want to make sure people know that we're listening to them and that we're doing our very best to make Massachusetts more affordable for folks who want to live here. Can I touch base on one other item?
Absolutely. So that was going to be my next question to you is, what did I not talk about that is important to us that you want to call out?
Yeah. So the cost of transit. So if you're buying Charlie cards, or if you're taking the bus, taking the subway, taking the commuter rail. Also, if you're using your bike, you can, bike repairs and things like that. All of those items are now going to be considered tax deductible. And again, we're trying to encourage folks to use public transit, get them off the roads, help our traffic situation, continue to battle our climate challenges with regards to the emissions that transportation creates. And again, I think that strikes again at the affordability and competitiveness issue. So when folks are looking about where they're going to live, and all of a sudden, you might have a couple of kids and that's a few bucks. You might be somebody who commutes to work. Well, that's a few more dollars. You might be a renting family. That's a few more dollars. And you put all those things together and all of a sudden we're talking about making an impact on people's lives. Again, putting real money in real people's pockets.
Thank you for that. And thank you for all the work you've done to help make that happen. Obviously, this is not going to affect our 2023 taxes that we'll be filing shortly. But when will it go into effect?
So it went into effect as of the date that was signed. So the estate tax piece actually is retro back to January 1st, 2023. The child dependent tax credit, that's actually stepped up over the course of 2 years. So I think it's $360 in FY23 and then goes up to $480 in FY24. So there's a series of dates on each of them, but the bulk of them are going to place over the course of the next couple of years.
That's great. So moral of the story, before you file your taxes, go in and look or meet with someone who's very closest to make sure you're taking advantage of all the things that you can take advantage of. Thank you, Rich, for doing that. Anything else that's going on that you want to cover before I bring Marie into our discussion?
No, I don't think so. I just, again, just appreciate you taking the time and having me on. And anybody who's listening out there, feel free to reach out to my office if we can be of assistance. We're always here to help. We're always here to listen. And as always, I love my job and I appreciate everybody taking the time to spend some time with me today.
Well, thank you so much. These are two really important things to catch up on. I appreciate it. I know in the new year, we'll have you back on. There'll be lots of new things to talk about as well then. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Sam.
Excellent. Marie, welcome.
Hi, how are you?
Good. I'm excited to talk to you because I know it hasn't been that long, but I feel like I haven't talked to you in a while, other than a quick flow. We bumped into each other at a forum or something, but so glad to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing this.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So there was a great Veterans Day programming. We were talking before we started to record. It looked like there was great attendance. And I took a quick peek and there's a lot going on, which is always wonderful to see. What are some of the upcoming programs you want to make sure people really know about?
Yes, so over this past weekend, I'll just start there and move into December, but a big shout out to our staff here and our program coordinator, Amy O'Brien, for working with SCI, Social Capital Inc., to get volunteers together. We coordinated together, we provide the space, we keep supplies here, and this is the place where all the volunteers come. So there are 24, 25 seniors who got their leaves raked and their yards cleaned up. Some more leaves will fall, but we've got.
Yeah, it's such a huge help for those of you who watch every week. This is what Nicole was talking about last week with us, was the volunteers they were using. I love this program because it's a really tangible way to help people.
Yeah, so it's a great partnership and we enjoy working with them. So moving into December, we've got some lineups. We've got the Rotary has been a great partner. The Woburn Rotary Club has been a great partner for us. They're going to do a breakfast on Tuesday, December 5th. We're going to do some cocoa and caroling on Tuesday, December 12th. And we're working on the new newsletter. Folks can always call or stop by. Get this. We're going to do a cookie swap. One of our members is going to go ahead and run that on Thursday, December 14th. We're going to do a Yankee swap, and then we have a holiday party with the Boston Skyline Chorus on the 18th. So that'll be a lot of fun. One of our members is a member of them. We had them here before, but it was when everybody still had to wear masks. So so we're looking forward to it without the masks.
I love it. And,
Yeah.
I'm glad you brought up the holidays and all the great things that you're doing. But one of the things we know is that it can be a very lonely time for people over the holidays. It can be a very joyous time and full of celebration, but also for many of our seniors in particular, they can be lonely if they're not near family. Is there anything that in addition to all the great programs you're doing that hopefully engage them, anything that you might recommend for residents in general that we can do to help make sure that those folks feel celebratory and joyous during this time and support?
I think just if you notice, noticing and helping and really letting people know that you care. We're getting a lot of calls about snow shoveling already. If there's young people in a neighborhood who know that they have an older person. I mean, I grew up that way. A lot of us grew up that way, where parents would say, can you go over and just shovel the walkway, or, share something with a neighbor that you've known for a long time that might be alone or something like that.
Yeah.
Make them a pie or something.
Have a cup of coffee even, right?
If you can invite them over. That's why we're here, and we have curb to curb transportation service. Our transportation department does a great job of getting people here who otherwise, transportation is one of the biggest challenges, for folks who are there. So if they needed something, groceries or something, a ride someplace, it's hard, because if you lose your license or you can't drive anymore because of your vision or some other impairment or whatever. So that's a big deal, and that's why we're here. But
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's one thing we can all do is make sure that all the seniors that we know are aware of all the great things happening at the senior center and know that there's free transportation available for them to help them. So that's something we can all just make note of, folks who might not know about it, and make sure that they're aware.
Yeah, one thing we're doing, I should mention, because I didn't know that I'll let you know in a second. We have Shine counselors. So that is Medicare open enrollment, prescription drug benefits. We've got 3 super counselors. We work with Minuteman Senior Services, and we give them office space here, and so we do that every year. We have served more seniors than all of the communities in their 18 service area communities, including Somerville and Cambridge. So we're extremely busy, and they're helping a lot of folks. So if people don't know about that, open enrollment is now. There's still some open appointments. So if you haven't made an appointment, you can call the main number at 781-897-5960 and schedule an appointment.
Well, I think it's a great testament how well you and the team reach out to the community, that we've got so many people who have taken advantage of it, even more than some of the cities around us who have just as much need and maybe even bigger.
I was surprised, but I'm pleasantly surprised.
It's a good thing.
Yeah.
I know that Meg, who was a friendly face and familiar face at the senior center, is moved on to a new career opportunity. But there's still lots of stuff going on. Is that an open position, or has that been filled?
It's an open position. I'm working with HR and with the union right now to be sure we have the right information out there. It's going to be offered. It gets offered internally to the union. It's the Service Employees Union, so it goes to them first, and they have, I want to say 10 days, but they have a certain amount of time. And then if nobody bids for the job, it will go out to the public. So we're hoping to fill that as soon as possible. Meanwhile, everybody's pitching in like they always do. But, Megan was great, and it was hard to lose her, but she's gone on to also to help people in the public defender's office. So we know she's also still doing good things.
I love it. She's made a great positive impact. So
yeah,
I'm sure big shoes to fill, but somebody will. So
somebody will, yes.
It will be, it will be great. The last thing I wanted to talk to you about is, I know that there's, I don't know if it's a Friends of the Council of Aging or whatever the organization name officially is, but there's a fundraiser coming up at the Chateau. And I thought maybe we could talk a little bit about what that is and how those funds will be used.
Sure. So I'll start at the beginning. So we have the Woburn Council on Aging that's appointed by the mayor and approved by the city council, members who help set policy or programs, or if we have trouble making a decision about the use of rooms or our people can't agree, we put it to the board and they put it to a vote. So that's the official. And then we have a nonprofit. It's a 501c3 and it's called the Friends Helping Seniors. And so they've got their own board membership and their own membership, and people donate to sort of keep them afloat. They actually, the last big ticket item that they helped purchase was a van, which we're going to be needing a new van, but in 2019, they did like a third. The state, Rich Haggerty was involved with that, and the city, the Mayor Galvin was involved with that, came together and helped get one. So they are having, these happen quite a lot, you know, at different restaurants. They did it with Jake and Joe's, and now they're going to do it on this Thursday at the Chateau. 20% of the bill pay of the total amount paid, I think, will go to Friends Helping Seniors. And what they pay for, so that was a big ticket item, but the Veterans Day program, all the sandwiches and the refreshments, the Friends Helping Seniors paid for that. So when it comes to craft supplies, a lot of times they'll help with that. A lot of these behind the scenes, I believe they bought the ping pong table. So
Great.
a lot of these type of things that that would fall off of the page of our budget, they come in and they help do that. So they're looking to do a larger fundraiser to help with purchasing a new van. The city would come up with some funds, but we always try to find other ways to come up with the money so that we don't have to go after the taxpayers every time.
Well, that sounds wonderful. There's so much going on. I'm so grateful that you could squeeze us in to have a quick update. Thank you for that time. One other little thing I just want to ask you about. I see often also lots of the questions like, hey, does the senior center need puzzles or games or donations? Is there anything that you are looking for over this holiday season that you want people to know about to keep their eyes and ears open for?
So that's a great question. Thank you. People are very generous. We have enough puzzles to last us a long time. I know that a lot of people had them through COVID, and we've got a good amount at the moment. So I'd say I'd pause on that. However, the Friends Helping Seniors has space here. They have a gift shop. So gift quality items, and we don't do things like electronics, things that could be broken or would need to be fixed, and then we'd have to pay to recycle them. You know, because that's often the case. Maybe it worked when they had it at home and it came here, but so they've got everything from jewelry. The jewelry goes to household items, dishes, glasses. During this holiday season, if there are items that people could purchase inexpensively, you know, some of the people do their shopping here, and some people maybe who wouldn't, you know, you get a great deal there. Let me put it that way. So. You know, they're even working with Country Club Heights to see if we could get some gifts to bring over there so their seniors could purchase some things because the folks who can't go anywhere that aren't as mobile as other people. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's wonderful, Marie. Thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate all the work that the team does. There's so much going on. I encourage people to go check out the website, go visit the senior center, sign up for the newsletter, keep informed, because there's always new things that are popping on the schedule.
Stop by.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
And Woburn, as always, please continue to take good care of each other.